Hey guys, Dark Angel here. Uh, Today we're going to talk about discerning the difference between a fictitious United States and a natural American citizen. What the state and courts don't want you to know, what the police don't want you to know. Okay, so for all you that didn't know, you know, this is one country, two jurisdictions. So you have to learn to discern which jurisdiction you belong to, or you need to decide which jurisdiction you belong to, is basically what I'm trying to say. Basically, you have the United States of America corporate, which is all commercial, or you have the American citizen, which is a natural inherited right citizen. Now, keep in mind that United States of America corporate or commercial is fictitious. That's the fictitious America. Because of the simple fact is a government is made up. It's created. Okay, it's not born. A lot of people has the misconception that the government is a real government when in fact it is not. Uh, I will disclose some Supreme Court cases that the United States of America doesn't want you to know has been decided by the Supreme Court, and it's stay stay with me on this because you're going to find it pretty interesting. I think you're going to find it pretty interesting. Everything that I'm telling you is based on facts, 100% facts, court cases straight from the Supreme Court. And as well as I want you to keep in mind that I am not giving you this information in telling you how to go execute it. Okay, this is for educational purposes only. If you do plan to utilize any of the case law that I present to you, do like I do, okay, and pause the video, get the name of the case that I cite, okay, go to a law library and get the original case out of the law library, okay. Don't, and I can't stress this enough, do not utilize cases that you see on YouTube or trust what you see on Google, based on the fact that a lot of the cases that are presented on Google are altered cases that fits someone else's agenda that might sound good to you, and then you have to ask yourself one thing. The old age-old question goes, it's too good to be true, it sounds too good to be true. More than likely it probably is. Now, granted, in my past videos I've already proven to you guys that traveling without a driver's license, registration, and all that is factual. It's 100% factual. But I also want you to keep in mind this: you're going to meet resistance from the police power based on the fact that the United States is a business. They're in business for profit. They're not in business to make a loss. So you have to understand that driving without a license, registration, etc., taps into their untapped revenue that they've discovered. See, a lot of people are going to soon find out eventually that they've been programmed, scammed, as well as duped into believing that a driver's license and registration is necessary. It is only necessary for the business of the United States, the commercial business. And I've already proven to you in a case by the name of Reno versus Condon that Supreme Court Justice Rehnquist made it very clear that anything coming out of the DMV, any information that is rendered to the DMV, such as your name, birth date, etc., etc., when you go to apply for a license and registration, is commercial. He's made it very clear in that case, and that's a 2000 case, everybody. So that's like not even 23 years ago that this case was decided. So with that being said, a lot of people are always talking about, well, the cases that you talk about are all old cases. Well, that's how you win cases, is by going to the old, because it's the old cases that set precedents. It's the old cases, if they have not been overturned or superseded by another case somewhere along the line, they are law. They are still law regardless of the age of the case. That's what a lot of people don't understand. And a lot of people keep wanting to refer back to the Hendricks versus Maryland case. But again, if you read I think it's like in the last paragraph of the opinion that was rendered in that case, one specific word came up: commerce. So, being that Supreme Court Justice Rehnquist had validated in 2000 that anything dealing with the DMV or any license was in fact for hire and commercial, every license, all the laws that's ever been produced by the United States, its corporation, were in reference to its business. And you go around today and you drive in your automobiles and you travel in your automobiles and you have this license on your car, which is a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment. So you're surrendering a right to privacy, if that's how you choose to travel like I do. So you're surrendering up a right, okay? You're giving up that right to take on a privilege that you are giving up another right, okay? Rights can't be privileged. So we need to get that understanding. Rights cannot be restricted. They cannot be regulated. They cannot be deprived. They cannot be amended. There's no such thing. And if you believe that there is, you're wrong. There's only two, with a third possible way that rights can be surrendered. One is that the state takes a bill to the legislation passes a bill to amend the Constitution. 1. 2, knowingly and voluntarily surrender your rights. 3, due process. Now, on the due process one, okay, I add due process in there because of the simple fact I've come across case law that actually say that unless due process has been served, now that a right can be surrendered. So let's say, for instance, hypothetically speaking, that you go to court and you go through the proceedings, due process was properly served. Can you challenge that? Yes, you can challenge any proceeding. But let's say due process is not served. Is that a challengeable offense? Of course, yes it is. So see, when I add number 3 into the actual 2 that the Constitution actually supports, okay, I'm adding that just based on what Supreme Court has said in the past, okay? So it's not necessarily a procedure that is required. However, due process is a big factor in a lot of the maritime admiralty courts, so you have to keep that in mind. 1 is challengeable, 2 is not. Now, granted, maybe if a bill was passed to where rights could be violated in the Constitution, or they amend the Constitution, you can go up and challenge the Constitution, the value of that, and you can do that. But this is just, like I said, this is just to kind of touch on that base, because of the simple fact is, a lot of people believe that it is okay for the state to take a right, turn it into a privilege, and then a right turn it into a crime. There has never been established a case law that gives the state that authority to do that, okay? when I introduced this video, I wanted you guys to know one thing. This video, the courts, the government, and the police do not want you to know what I'm about ready to disclose. They don't want you to know it. Okay? They do not want you to know that there's one country, two jurisdictions. There's actually a free jurisdiction and a guarded jurisdiction, which is what I would call a supervised jurisdiction. So there actually is two jurisdictions, one country that we live in. You have the United States of America, okay? Then you have the United States of America Republic, which is the natural man. And a lot of people don't understand that the government is artificial. It's made up. Okay? So we're going to get into that because I want for you guys to learn to discern which part of the United States do you belong to. You know, you need to make a decision, or you should make a decision. Maybe the majority of the masses is happy where they're at because they're all like sheep. You know, they bow their head down and follow the herder. You know, but then you have those who are the true natural Americans who refuse to be programmed, who follow their own course of action. Okay, so you know, it's something that you have to just look at and just mull over, you know, and make your own mind, you know. So when a citizen is attempting to enforce the Constitution as herein shown, he is doing so not for himself alone, but also for others, as a private attorney general vindicating a policy that the Constitution writers considered of the highest priority. Newman versus Piggy Park, Enterprises 390 U.S. Okay. So, the right of a citizen to drive, listen to this now. The right of a citizen to drive, and you notice I didn't use the expression travel there, but we all know travel is perfectly legal. But here's where it gets interesting. The right of the citizen to drive on the public street with freedom from police interference, unless he is engaged in suspicious conduct associated in some manner with criminality, is a fundamental constitutional right which must be protected by the courts. People versus Horton, 14 Cal. So that case there, when you get to the part of unless he is engaged in suspicious conduct associated in some manner with criminality, you've heard that expression, probable cause. That's a loophole for the police, and I will explain that a little later on in what I'm going to read. But that's a loophole that the police use. They use it like candy. So you're going to find out that there's a whole bunch of methods and procedures that the police and the state use that are just basically loopholes for them to get around violating your constitutional rights. However, if you pay attention to the loopholes, they actually close. So, you know, I'm going to show you the difference between that too. So, government commercial corporations, or the government commercial corporate. First, we want to understand what the meaning of a government is, okay? Because the meaning of the government is what a lot of people has never really even understood. But the Supreme Court understood it very well and very clear and made it this. As the Supreme Court stated, governments are corporations, inasmuch as every government is an artificial person, an abstraction, a creature of the mind only. A government can deal only with artificial persons. The imaginary, having no reality or substance, cannot create or attain parity with the real. Penhollow versus Doan's Administrators, 3 U.S., 3 Dallas. Now, remember when I first started this, I was telling y'all, you know, you have the United States of America, the corporation, which is fictitious. It's fictitious. It's made up. It's not born, it's not naturally born. It wasn't naturally inherited. Man created it. Okay? You have to keep that in mind. So the Supreme Court, they describe the government as being artificial, you know. So here's how it actually operates. Corporate laws deal with the formation and operations of corporations and relate to commercial and contract laws. So if the corporates are related to commercial, the activity that they're referring to is commercial, which refers to the activities of business, industry, trade, and to engage in commerce or profit. Now that you're understanding that the government is being described as a corporate business, what is the purpose of the business? Okay? Business is defined as an entity seeking to profit from an activity. Think about it. Driver's license, registration, profit. Because if that was going where history has programmed a lot of you to believe it was going, don't you think the roads would be in way better condition than what they actually are? I would think so. So, so a corporate commercial engages in contract laws. What is the definition of a contract? Contract is to enter into a formal and legally binding agreement that is intended to be enforceable by law. License. Violate the license, the law intervenes. Contract. Guarantee. Government, corporate, commercial business is like any business. To have any jurisdiction over you, they must have a contract. Okay, so in order for the United States to have jurisdiction over you, they need to have a contract. They need to bind you to something. And so by them binding you to something, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a driver's license registration. It could be anything where you sign your name in all caps. And a lot of people say, oh, here we go with this argument about the all caps again. Well, you got to understand something about the all caps. If you go look at the definition of what all caps means, it means artificial. It means fictitious. It's not real. And that's actually the definition of it. So I'm not understanding how people can't get that and understand the association of the all caps, or as we call it, straw man, which is a fictitious man, versus the natural man. So you need to ask yourself, are you fictitious or are you fiction? So that's like I said, that's something that needs to really be thought about. Okay? All government departments are separate commercial corporate entities. Each government corporate is formed and makes laws specifically to their purpose. These laws only apply to that specific corporate entity's contracts. Without a contract with that entity, you are not bound to abide by the laws of that corporate entity. Every citizen, listen to this now, every citizen is independent of all laws. When law enforcement enforce these laws upon a non-bonded citizen, they violate their oath of Article 6 to uphold the Constitution. Corporates make laws to restrict freedoms, then deceive you into a contract to receive a freedom from these restrictions. Corporates use words like illegal, against the law, as a fear tactic to appear you are required to obtain their contract to keep from violating their laws. Corporates steal constitutional rights in exchange for constructural privileges to control your freedom. Okay? Government stealing freedoms, that's every day, just by manipulation of words, manipulations of certain corporations that are integrated into society. The DMV is a multi-billion dollar corporate business. Now think about it. If business is open for profit, think about the impact that has on the corporate business when citizens realize that, hey, I don't have to register my vehicle. Hey, I don't need to get a license. You know how many billions of dollars that corporation loses because it was all a Ponzi scheme from the very beginning? Man, the impact. And like I said, the courts, the government, they don't want y'all to know this. But I'm sharing it with you because I'm not scared. I'm not under their jurisdiction. I'm not a United States citizen. I'm an American. And I'm a natural man. I'm a real man. I'm not a fictitious man. So, they can bring it, because I did have a friend who's telling the same thing that I'm telling y'all. And he was actually confronted by the government. And I'm not sure as to the actual outcome of that, as to what actually took place with all that. But I do know for a fact that the government did make several attempts to get him to stop relaying the information that I'm relaying on several occasions. And they can bring it if they want. They can come, because here's the thing. First of all, I'm not in your jurisdiction. Second of all, the truth needs to be told. And at what cost? Who cares? I don't care. I'm going to get the truth out there. Like I told y'all in my previous videos, it's about the truth. It's about facts. And again, I'm making this disclaimer again because I want to make sure everybody knows and understands. I'm not giving you this information and telling you to go out there and utilize it. So don't think that. Research it for yourself. You hearing me sit here and telling you what I'm telling you, research it for yourself. And once you find out that that you can't find anything that contradicts what I say, but everything that you find collaborates with what I say, again, utilize your own thought. Use your own mind. So anyway, the DMV is a multi-billion-dollar corporate business, and everyone in the United States has been programmed to believe that a license is required. But the Supreme Court and the lower courts have always acknowledged this, that driving is a right. And see, that's where the police try to get you to, driving's not a right, it's a privilege. No, man, it's not. It's always been a right. They've been programmed to say it's a privilege. You've been programmed because you followed the masses. The Supreme Court and the lower courts have always acknowledged that driving is a right protected by the Constitution and not a privilege. So, in that sense, I'm going to try to help to deprogram you and let you know that the right to drive a motor vehicle, automobile, upon the public streets and highways is not a mere privilege. It is a right of liberty, the enjoyment of which is protected by the guarantees of the federal and state constitutions. Barbarian versus Lusser, Lussier, 139 A2D. Okay. Hitler once said, at one time, Hitler made this statement: "Tell a lie so big that no one can conceive it as nothing but the truth." Interesting, coming from a dictator and a hater of man, greatest world ever, but that saying is so true. You tell a lie so big and so convincing that, hey, the majority of the masses is going to believe it's true. So the government, commercial, corporate entities use an indirect tactic of impairing your rights with requirements of contracts, license permits, etc., to steal your freedoms. Those things which are considered as inalienable rights which all citizens possess cannot be licensed, since those acts are not held to be a privilege. City of Chicago versus Collins, at 51 Northeast. Now you're getting into what I was telling you, the inalienable rights, the inherent rights. Okay? Natural man, inherited rights, inalienable rights cannot be deprived. They cannot be altered. They cannot be taken away. Corporate rights can. They can be privileged. They can be restricted. They can be regulated. Difference. Big difference there. What I just tell you. One country, two jurisdictions. Simple. Okay, so corporates use fear tactics or empty threats to appear as if you are required a license to allow you freedom from the restriction of the law, of that law. How can a law that violates the Constitution be applied to a non-bonded citizen? Persons faced with unconstitutional licensing law which purports to require a license as a prerequisite to exercise of a right may ignore the law and engage with impunity in exercises of such right. People versus Battle, Shuttlesworth versus Birmingham, Alabama, 394 U.S. The problem with the Supreme Court stating that you may ignore the law in exercise of such rights is that law enforcement assumes that all laws applies to everyone. They turn an empty threat into action without authority of a contract to non-bonded citizens. Every man is independent of all laws except those prescribed by nature. He is not bound by any institutions or corporations formed by that of his fellow man without his consent by use of contracts. Cruden versus Neely, 2 North Carolina, 338. Hey, and it doesn't say that the majority has to vote. This says you. If you don't consent to it, you didn't approve it. Period. That's individual, because you got to remember, we're individuals. Okay? So as individuals, that is your right to make that decision, that vote. And if you did not vote on it, it doesn't apply to you. Period. End of story. They're trying to always make, well, the corporate always relies on the masses. Okay. A natural American man relies on his self. One person, his self. So, the social contract. Citizens are required to submit to a government monopoly by being forced to pay these agencies taxes for services. In return, these government agents will provide a protection service. If the police agencies does not protect and serve, then one party in the social contract isn't keeping up its end of the bargain, because the courts made it very clear that the police agencies are not required to provide protection to the individual against another individual. The police are well within their rights to pick and choose when to intervene, even when a threat is apparent. There's that another loophole, discretion. There is no constitutional right to be protected by the state against being murdered by criminal or madmen. Bowers versus DeVito, 686 Fed. The fundamental principle of American law that a government and its agents are under no general duty to provide public services such as police protection to any individual citizen. Warren versus District of Columbia, 444. The duty to provide public services owed to the public at large, and absent a special relationship between the police and an individual, no specific duty exists. No specific legal duty exists. Warren versus District of Columbia. Law enforcement agencies and personnel have no duty to protect individuals from the criminal acts of others. Instead, their duty is to preserve the peace arrest lawbreakers for the protection of the general public and protect the corporation. Lynch versus North Carolina Department of Justice. The Due Process Clause did not require the state to protect its citizens from the actions of private individuals. The intent of the Due Process Clause was to prevent the state from abusing its power and protect the people. By holding that no state will deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, this did not mean that a state must ensure that people were protected from each other. Thus, a state's failure to protect an individual from private violence does not violate the Due Process Clause. Chief Justice William Rehnquist, DeChaney versus Winnebago, 489 U.S. And that was a case that he heard in 1989. If you go back to the case that I had talked about where Judge Rehnquist, Supreme Court Justice Rehnquist, he made a ruling in a 2000 case where he was letting you know that the DMV is in fact a corporate commercial entity of the United States. And when we present this information to the police, when we're pulled over, the police want to act dumb and act like they have no idea that all licenses issued from the DOL or the DMV are in fact commercial. It's a fact. If you're not traveling in commerce, they have no business regulating you. They have no business pulling you over, because it's not probable cause to pull you over because you don't have a license or registration on your car. That's not probable cause, because the law specifically states that the state has a right to regulate the traffic. Yeah, in commerce, does not have the right to regulate private travel. Does not. Judge Rehnquist says so in that case, Reno versus Condon. Condon. You need to find that case and read that. Research that case. It says it right there in the very first paragraph of the case, rule of law. It actually says that the state has no right to enforce a federal regulation that regulates private individuals. So, just saying, it's there. You want to read it, you read it. You'll do yourself a big favor. And you might even reduce the stress in your life by coming on here, because, like I said, this channel is designed for all you trolls, constitutional traitors, and haters, because I know they're out there, and I know that you guys are trying every way you can to run smear campaigns on those of us who are actually out here fighting for our rights. You like to, make derogatory comments and things of that magnitude. But here's the thing, you don't take the wind out of my sails. Every time you open your mouth, you just put more air in my sails. See, because basically what you do is you sit back and you have this I wish these people would shut up mentality. But it's us that's out here that you're going to end up reaping the benefits from. And that's the funny part, that a lot of people don't actually realize. Because you trolls, haters, and traitors, y'all ain't really trolls, haters, and traitors. You just want attention, because misery loves company. Because you're too afraid to get out there and fight for your rights. You're cowards. But, that's another story for another time. But the bottom line is, when you're here on this channel, you're going to get the truth. I've already ran off 2 trolls on this channel. I've ran off 2 and no, I did not block them. I ran off 2 trolls by providing them with 100% proof that what they're saying, they can't contradict. They can't contradict nothing that I've presented to them. And all you new ones that are here, and all my new subscribers that are here, I want to thank you guys. But for all you new trolls, hey, hang tough, because I want you to go through and look at the videos, man. I got one with Cameron Wilson on there who actually won in court about this. Driving without a license, driving without registration, no plates on his car. And he actually lays the documents down, shows you them, dismissed without prejudice by the judge, signed. and the district attorney signed proof positive it works. Proof positive that it is factual. It's not that it works, because it's not some kind of game, it's not a con or anything of this magnitude. It's facts. One country, two jurisdictions. Which one do you belong to? The courts made it clear that officers have no constitutional duty to protect individuals from criminal acts of violence from other individuals. Courts do claim their only duties are to preserve the peace, to settle disputes between groups, protect the general public, secure groups threatened, prevent state from abusing its powers, to stop the encroaching of corporate contracts upon the citizens, and arrest lawbreakers, those who violate their contracts. Whoopsie. Did you hear that? And arrest those who violate their contracts. Your license. You violate your contract, they're going to arrest you. Now the one that I know for a fact they don't do is prevent the state from abusing its powers. How are they preventing the state from abusing its powers when they're abusing the powers? By arresting you. Every officer has violated their oath, Article 6, knowingly or unknowingly when enforcing any type of government corporate's contracts upon that of non-bonded citizens, by refusing to protect that citizen from the encroachment of that entity's contract. In other words, equal protection of the law. They don't do that. Some of them do, some of them don't. The ones that do, I believe they do it based on the fact that they actually don't know the law and they don't really want to get into conflict, because a lot of officers do not like conflict. So I don't actually believe that the majority of them can actually sit there and say, well, yeah, the law says this. And I don't actually hear an officer actually admitting to that, because they've been programmed to believe that a license registration is required. And they've been programmed to enforce that if you do not register and or have a license, you're violating the law. They've been programmed to believe this. So would I believe that an officer would actually walk up and say, yeah, you have a right to do this? If he is, then he's probably one in the know. But for the most part, no. I don't see it. If law enforcement are not required to protect you, who will? That's the whole point of the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment was designed to protect you. See, not the police. That's the whole reason why the Second Amendment was added into the Constitution. Because if the police power are not required to protect you, who's going to protect you and your family? The Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, of course, duh. You have a right to protect your family. You have a right to protect your property. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of people don't understand that. So the Second Amendment, it gives you the right to protect you and your family. You must use it. You should use it. Anyone who wants protection or to purchase and take class on the responsibility of using a weapon, criminals seek easy targets and are less likely to attack anyone prepared and know how to defend themselves. See, criminals will stand down if they know that they're walking into a potential firefight. They're not going to stand up. But there's so much that you need to know, because with gun rights, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of misconceptions, but this is what I say. Okay. So, if schools teach competitive sports, weapons, which is also a competitive sport, should also be respectfully taught in public schools. Owning weapons is a right, and all Americans should know the basic use and dangers of weapons. You can't blame the child if someone gets hurt, dies, if we refuse to teach them the responsibilities in use of weapons. You can't blame a weapons manufacturer for misconduct of someone's actions or producing a product to defend yourself. You can't blame the officer for not being there to protect you, because he's not. He's actually not. That's not his job. You know, it's not his job. So you can't get him. You can't blame a church, school, store, etc., for not allowing trained citizens for protection. Terrorists love those types of unarmed public places. Everyone is a target. Protect yourself. In other words, what they're saying is, you know, you got these malls, and people go up in there, start shooting up the place, but they don't want guns on the premises, you know. So, yeah, naturally you're going to have a big disaster because you're not allowing your citizens to carry protection. you know, um, you know, you can blame yourself for refusing to take up weapons to defend your friends, family, or fellow citizens that can't defend themselves, children. But let me go back, because you can't blame criminals or the types of weapons that they use to kill friends, family, or groups of citizens. But what you can do is accept responsibility and blame yourself for refusing to take up weapons trainings and buy yourself a weapon to protect your family, friends, etc., etc. And to me, that's like some of the best advice that's laid down. You know, why is everybody out here blaming? Well, this gun did this. No, that gun did not do that. That gun didn't do a goddamn thing. And that's something you need to get straight. That gun didn't do a goddamn thing. It was that person that picked that motherfucker up and decided to use it. That's who has the problem. That gun didn't do shit. You lay that gun on the table, it ain't gonna move unless you pick it up. So if you don't make an effort, that gun's just gonna lay there. So no, the gun didn't cause the violence. It's the individual that utilized that gun. And then you say, well, it's a gun of mass destruction. No, it's not. It's a conversation piece if it's hanging on the wall. Again, if that gun is not picked up by somebody, that gun is nothing but a conversation piece, a paperweight. You know, that's all it is. So it's just like everything in the world. If man don't make the effort to make something happen, ain't nothing happening. Bottom line, people. Bottom line. It's common sense. You know? Man. So basically, there was a thing back a while back where they were going to bring 25,000 Russian PMCs here to the United States and start being trained by FEMA and Homeland Security for the purpose of removing guns from the people's homes. Communists now. They're going to bring communists. This is what was said was going to be done. That they were going to bring communists to the United States to help remove guns from our homes. Now, here's the interesting thing about this, that I know it for a fact is true because I lived in San Angelo, Texas one year, and while living there, there was a store there, Albertsons, that had closed down. It had been closed down for a while, abandoned for a few years at that time. And one night I was leaving the base, coming off a base, and I noticed a bunch of weird uniformed guys getting out of a couple of buses going down the side of this building. Now, they painted this building all white, so I had no idea, you know, what the hell and what kind of uniforms are those? And then it dawned on me, they're Russian. They were Russians. So, somewhere in the blackout side of the United States, okay, there is actually some training that I've witnessed myself going on with these PMCs, okay? So, do I know if it's for what's written? I don't know. You know, I don't know. But I do know that I've seen it. And it's not a conspiracy. It's not a conspiracy theory. And, oh, this is what you think's going on. No, it's what I saw with my own two eyes. But again, like I said, I don't know if it's in reference to training them to take guns from the citizens. I don't know. It could be a joint operation or something to that magnitude, for all I know. But with the way you look at today, with the way things are going on today in the world with Putin and the United States, I kind of find that highly unlikely. Now, back then, this was back in the 90s when I saw this, so, it's no telling what the relationship is there. So, you know. But anyway, government corporate laws cannot overexceed the Constitution. The DMV is a commercial field of activity. Oh, here we hear this again. And actually, if you remember, I was just telling you that in Reno versus Condon, Judge Rehnquist said that. Well, here it is again, founded in two other cases, or one other case. It actually says the exact same thing. So, commercial field of activity, and the police have no authority or jurisdiction to enforce social contracts upon that of private citizens' rights. Did you hear that? Private citizens' rights. No police has jurisdiction over you. Okay? The right to travel, the right to mode of conveyance, the right to locomotion are all absolute rights, and the police cannot make void the exercise of rights. State versus Armstead, 60 South, 778. Problem. Your right to drive without a license still does not stop police harassment. It won't. They'll always harass you. Like I said, this is a business. They're not trying to lose money. They want money. So they're going to try to coerce you and get you to sign that contract. So you need to know that. An officer should know the limits of their authority when enforcing a contract law upon a non-bonded citizen. Now, remember what I said earlier about probable cause? Here you go, listen. Stopping a car for no other reason than to check the license and registration is unreasonable under the Fourth Amendment, Delaware versus Prouse, 440 U.S., 448. It's unreasonable. It's an unreasonable stop just to check you, just to see if you got a license and registration. You don't have plates on your car. That's an unreasonable stop because of the simple fact the laws have already been set in place and pretty much are already telling you that it's okay to travel. But for some reason, the police have it in their head that you need to be under this contract, when in fact you don't. You don't need to be under no contract. It's not a requirement. You have to learn to separate yourself from the United States and American natural. Now see, a lot of people say, well, it's national. No, natural. Natural man versus fictitious man. Okay? Natural man, fictitious man. Fictitious United States of America, the corporation, which is made up, created. Hey, you was born. You inherited certain rights that cannot be taken away. Period. All law enforcement agencies are government puppets. They are programmed that when a law is made, it applies to everyone, and to push their authority over your rights, they are the wolves in sheepskins clothing. They tactically use deception and or threats to enforce social contracts. When the police continue to deceive the citizens with lies, the less the police can be trusted. You should always question authority and never take them for their word. And here's a couple of examples, a few examples of misconduct that the police actually use. State codes are monopolized to allow officers to lie to a citizen during an investigation so long as they promise you nothing. Is that corrupt? You bet. How can you trust an officer that has the right to lie to you? He's always talking about he wants you to be truthful, be honest, but yet here he's got statutes in place to where he can lie to you, coerce you, as well as what is the word I'm looking for? If you really want to get technical about it, you can actually I can't think of it right now, but anyway, you get my point. You know, a person detained for an investigatory stop can be questioned, but is not obligated to answer. Answers may not be compelled, and refusal to answer furnishes no basis for an arrest. Justice White, Hibble, automobiles have the right to use the highways of the state on an equal footing with other vehicles, motor vehicles, commercial, or comment 61 Yale. So the officers think no one is above the law, not that a non-bonded citizen is above the law. That law does not apply to them when claiming your rights. An officer will ask if you're a rights activist, you know, and then the best answer that I've come up with that you can say is, are you a rights violator? If they ask you if you're a rights activist, just say, hey, are you a rights violator? And if they say, well, no, well then I'm not today, or not right now at the moment. You see what I'm saying? Simple, you know. They pushing a statute on a non-bonded citizen makes the law null and void, regardless. So, and that is actually statutes that violate the plain and obvious principles of common right and common reason are null and void. Bennett versus Boggs, 1 Baldwin 60. So, an officer is programmed to always control the situation, even if there is nothing to be controlled. Pushes their authority for control usually violates your rights and their oath. Failure to obey the command of a police officer constitutes a traditional form of breach of the peace. Obviously, however, one cannot be punished for failing to obey the command of an officer if that command is itself violative of the Constitution. Wright versus Georgia. Did you hear that? Not. It doesn't have to be in compliance with the state statutes. It has to be in compliance with the Constitution. In other words, they tell you, I'm giving you a lawful order. The stop's not even lawful, so therefore everything that you're saying in reference to this stop is unlawful. Period. So you got to keep that in mind when you're thinking about that, because remember I was telling you that the officers have loopholes. They have tons and tons of loopholes that they get involved with. So one of the loopholes, an officer uses the words probable cause. That's one of the greatest loopholes ever created and ever used by police, because they use it like candy, like children eat candy and we eat ice cream and we love cake. It is their little loophole that stomps all over your rights. Citizens can be falsely accused and prosecuted of a crime as a result to cover up police misconduct by the use of the term probable cause. So there you go. I mean, I'm just putting it out there for you. Like I said, I'm going to keep it real with y'all and let y'all know that this is what it's really about, man. This isn't about freedom. This is about control. Organized enslavement. That's what it's about. That's what it's always been about. And a lot of people don't understand that. They walk around here in the United States believing that they're free. You're not free, you're enslaved. You've been enslaved. You've been programmed to believe you are free, but you are not. Free means no restraint, no restriction, no regulations, no stipulations. You understand? That's what free is. The ability to go about your way any way you want. Do what you want, as you please, whenever you please. That's free. That's what I do. If I decide to take one go to the store, I'm going to go to the store. If I decide to stay in bed and lay in bed all day and sleep all day, guess what? That's what I'm going to do. You know, if I decide I'm going to get in my automobile and take me a little ride, I'm going to do that too. Police pull me over, they're going to get the law. Notice of liability served right there on the spot. I'm going to serve that notice of liability to them right away and let them know, here's that little pretty little pension that you're looking at, you know, that little retirement thing you think you're going to get. I own that. I own that. So you might want to seriously think about your family, your kids' future, because if you're relying on that pension and that qualified immunity to get you off, and anything that's done here today by illegally detaining me, hell, just my fees alone on detaining me at a traffic stop unlawfully for violating my constitutional rights is $100,000 the first 30 minutes. And then it's $200,000 for every 10 minutes afterwards. Just saying. You can make your notice of liability as much as you want, because what it's going to result down to is a Wilkes case called damages, emotional stress, emotional disorder. You file that, they can't prove it. They can't prove that you didn't suffer, a stress from the situation. The police have put you up there, got you sitting on the side of the highway, embarrassing you in front of everybody, knowing that your constitutional right says you have a right to do what you're exercising. You don't have no right to be detained, interfered with, because you're exercising your right. Now, the flip side of that is, if you're exercising that right out doing criminal activity, then you got what coming to you. As I said, this is 100% going both ways. This is fair trade all the way around. So if you're out there doing bad, hey, expect to get what you got coming. But if you're out there doing good and doing your own business, minding your own business, and being your own person, and doing what's right, using common sense, making sure that you're traveling safely and taking the consideration of others, into perspective, more power to you. You know what I'm saying? And that's the way it should be. Always travel safely. Take other people into consideration where they may not take you into consideration. Be the better person. Take them into consideration. You have loved ones, family, kids, daughters, you have family. And the bottom line is you want to make sure that every time you go out and travel, you go home that night so that you can tell your family that you love them, and they can tell you that they love you, and that you make sure that you're there to hear that every day. So I always say that if you're out there traveling, do the right thing. Don't be a moron, don't be an idiot, because the parts of the regulation are for everybody. You can't get around it. I've seen videos where the guys he gets pulled over, and he believed that the regulations didn't pertain to him when he was speeding. He was doing 85 and a 65. Okay, well, that part of the regulations, they do pertain to you, dummy. Because of the simple fact is, that's common sense. It's called practicing safety measures of your own accord. Because you're not respecting other people. You come speeding up on somebody, you lose control of your automobile, and then, you don't put your life, their life, and everybody else's life in jeopardy. That's not responsible driving. So yeah, you deserve to be pulled over and given a ticket for that. Now, I will say this. You don't deserve the ticket for not having a license, registration, etc., etc., because of the simple fact you're allowed to operate, travel in your own automobile without it. But do you get that traffic ticket? Yeah, I do. I think that they should make a different proceeding for that. How that would work, I don't know. That would be something that would have to actually be looked into, because of the simple fact is, if you're not under contract with the United States, they don't have jurisdiction over you, which would still take the ticket and make it null and void, because traffic ticket is commercial as well. So a lot of people don't even understand that. So when you go into the court, the very first thing you want to do is challenge jurisdiction. Just saying. Challenge jurisdiction. And a court can't assume that they have jurisdiction. They have to provide jurisdiction. They have to show it. Did you sign something? Do they have something with your name on it showing that you reside at this residence? You want to make sure you don't have any of that. Don't have no contract, don't have nothing like that. So make sure that you know that, okay? Study that, research it, know it. Hey, this video got too long, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop right here with this video, and we're going to make a part 2, and we're probably going to make a part 3 and probably a part 4. I didn't realize that the video was getting so long, but yeah, so there you go, people. You know, part 1 is in the books and done. Video is going to be up on the rise, so I'm going to get here after a while and start on part 2, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so hey, this is the Dark Angel. Deuces.